I do, and also the third man. At the time, we were all involved in setting up the merchandise displays. Who was the third man at the time? George Cummings. I will show you a photograph that was taken immediately after the incident. I will show it first to council. Yes, I am familiar with this. The photograph is marked on the back as plaintiff's photo number 1C. Were these marked for identification? Yes, Your Honor. I will ask you to take a look at that photograph. Do you recognize what it depicts? Yes, I do. What does it depict? An end cap display of Mountain Pride mixed vegetables. What location in the store was this display? At the end of the aisle, aisle 15. As far as northwest, east, or south, where is aisle 15? It's at the south end. It's near the south exit in the store. When you say end cap, what are you referring to? Gondola or table? These are the tables. It's a long gondola with shelving all around. Now, with respect to this photograph, the cans of Mountain Pride vegetables are displayed at the end of the gondola. Is that correct? Yes, they are. Would you describe the composition of this entire display? The gondolas are 3 cases wide, approximately 4 cases, possibly 5 cases, I can't tell by this photo, high along the back of this display. Let's go to photo 1B, which appears to be a clear picture of the same display. And again, was this marked 1B previously? Yes, Your Honor. Okay, I've seen it. Now, you said the cases that appear in front of the bin were not there on the date of Mrs. Packard's accident. Well, again, please speak up, Mr. Clary. If you are not sure, just tell us that. I'm trying to think. At that time, they may have been there, but generally this isn't a practice to display merchandise cases in tiers of 6 cans. But they may or may not have been there on the date of Mrs. Packard's accident. Is that correct? That's right. The usual manner that the customers take the cans when they shop from that display is to take them out of the dump bin. Please take a look at Plaintiff's 1B, referring to the cases that are stacked on the back of the gondola, the very bottom case of the stack. What is that case resting on? Other cans are on the bin. In this particular display, I would say it's on the bin itself. By looking at the photo 1B or 1C, are you able to tell whether it's resting on the other cans or on the bottom of the bin itself? From the size of the case, I would say it would be on the bin itself. I'm almost positive that 3 food cases will fit inside the bin, especially the way they're set. It is so far from the perimeter wall. Okay, let's try another one. All right, this is direct examination by plaintiff's attorney. Mr. Brady, do you know a Mr. L.E. Pruitt? Yes. Had you discussed the insurance on the fixtures in Harry's Grill and Coffee Shop with Mr. Pruitt? Yes, I did. Did you have any correspondence with Mr. Pruitt regarding the fixtures for the coffee shop? I received no correspondence from him. I wrote him 1 letter after a couple of telephone conversations. Do you remember what was the nature of your conversation? What did he say to you, and what did you say to him? As I recall his office, I contacted his office after getting a phone call from Mr. Newman's secretary stating that Mr. Pruitt had called them and had told them that Mr. Parker didn't want us to write any insurance on this property, that Mr. Pruitt was going to write all the insurance for them. Please continue. Then I called Mr. Pruitt's office and explained to them that this contract, this master policy that we have, requires that all conditionally vended property be included under this blanket policy. Then, as a favor to him, I called the Metropolitan Underwriting Office in Chicago, Illinois, and asked them if they cared to make an exception in this particular case, and I was advised by the head underwriter, Mr. Purcell, that he could see no reason why there should be an exception, that the contract provided that all conditional sales should be included under this policy. So I advised Mr. Pruitt by letter that we were going to write it, that you were going to write it, that we were going to write it. Do you have any way of establishing the dates of these conversations you had with Mr. Pruitt? They were prior to November 18, because it was on November 18 that I wrote Mr. Pruitt, November 18, 1990. Then it was November 18, 1990 that you wrote Mr. Pruitt a letter informing him of this. That is right. And in your conversation with Mr. Pruitt, did you inform him that this policy that Mr. Newman had? Your Honor, I object to the leading questions. Sustained. Did you inform Mr. Pruitt of the nature of the policy? I will object to the leading question, Your Honor. Sustained. The letter is the best evidence. Do you have a copy of the letter that you wrote him? Yes, I have. May I see it, sir? May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Yes, I have here a letter to L.E. Pruitt Insurance Company, and it is signed by Theodore M. Brady. May I have this marked plaintiff's next in order for identification? Your Honor, it will be marked plaintiff's 18 for identification. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Yes. To clarify this is a letter you wrote to Mr. Pruitt after you had discussions with him regarding insurance on the fixtures in Harry's Grill and Coffee Shop. Is that right? That is correct. Would you read the letter to us, please? November 18, 1990, L.E. Pruitt Insurance, 50 Main Street, Springfield, Illinois. Subject, Harry's Grill and Coffee Shop. Dear Mark, I didn't get back to the office in time to call you this afternoon, and since I am not planning on being in the office tomorrow morning, I decided to drop you a note. This afternoon, I went to the West Springfield store fixtures and discussed this matter with Mr. Newman. He stated that Mr. Parker had been in his store yesterday and mentioned nothing about insurance and wanted to talk with him about it before making any decision. He got Mr. Parker on the phone while I was listening on an extension. Mr. Parker said that he was well satisfied with the coverage under this certificate and he wanted to leave it as it is. I trust that you will be able to write the rest of the line for him. Sincerely yours, Brady and Morrell Insurance, by T.M. Brady. Mr. Brady, you indicated you had been an insurance broker for about 3 years. Prior to that, what was your business or occupation, sir? I was in insurance claims for approximately 13 years. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Yes. Are you familiar with business interruption insurance? I am. I call your attention to People's 5 in evidence. This appears to be an insurance policy. It is. And is it a business interruption policy? It is. What are the limits on that policy, if you can tell by looking at it, sir? The face amount of the policy is $250,000. In the event of a business interruption, how will this be paid to the owner of the business? I would have to examine the policy quite carefully to tell you. Does it state an amount per day on that? Yes, it states the rate of $2,000 per day. Okay, let's try that one again. one more minute. Mr. Brady, do you know a Mr. L.E. Pruitt? Yes. Have you discussed the insurance on the fixtures in Harry's Grill and Coffee Shop with Mr. Pruitt? Yes, I did. Did you have any correspondence with Mr. Pruitt regarding the fixtures for the coffee shop? I received no correspondence from him. I wrote him one letter after a couple of telephone conversations. Do you remember what was the nature of your conversation? What did he say to you, and what did you say to him? As I recall his office, I contacted his office after getting a phone call from Mr. Newman's secretary stating that Mr. Pruitt had called them and had told them that Mr. Parker didn't want us to write any insurance on this property, that Mr. Pruitt was going to write all the insurance for them. Please continue. Then I called Mr. Pruitt's office and explained to them that this contract, this master policy that we have requires that all conditionally vended property be included under this blanket policy. Then, as a favor to him, I called the Metropolitan Underwriting Office in Chicago, Illinois, and asked them if they cared to make an exception in this particular case, and I was advised by the head underwriter, Mr. Purcell, that he could see no reason why there should be an exception. Mr. Schooling, S-C-H-O-O-L-I-N-G. Shorty is his first name, Whitworth, last name. W-H-I-T-W-O-R-T-H. Gordon Syme. Gordon, G-O-R-D-O-N. Syme, S-E-I-M, as in Mary. Harry Neal, N-E-A-L-E. Mr. Schooling, they keep referring to, talking about a codicil, the first codicil to his will. Lucy Goins, Lucy, L-U-C-Y. Goins, G-O-I-N-S. Ruth, R-U-T-H, her last name is Maron, M-A-R-O-H-N. Maud, M-A-U-D-E. Okay? 164 voids for 5 minutes. Starts with question by plaintiff's attorney. Okay? Here we go. What were his politics? I don't remember. He was an American. I don't remember whether he was Republican or Democrat. You don't remember the politics? No. But you remember his competence? Yes. You asked him on one occasion, are you acting under the influence of Shorty Whitworth? Yes, I did. What occasion was that? That was at the time he drew this will, which is offered for probate. That is the will of October 29, 1968. That's right. Why did you ask him that? I asked him that because Mr. Whitworth had accompanied him to my office and came into my private office with him, and because I consider that a very bad practice to allow another person in the room when my client is giving me instructions for the will, particularly when that other person is to share in the estate. It is my opinion that that throws the will open to the suspicion of undue influence. And for that reason, I always try to cover that field and be sure that there is no undue influence before I allow the will to be made. Other than asking that question, how else did you assure yourself there was no undue influence by asking Mr. Walker? Other than asking him that question, what else did you do? That's all. Wait a minute. I did something further because at the time he executed it, I asked him again if Shorty had influenced him. And at that time, Shorty was not with him, and he said no. Mr. Schooling, you knew, did you not, that Ed Walker was in the custom of keeping large sums of money on his person? No. Did you know that he was in the habit of keeping large sums of money in his home? Cash? No. Did you know he was in the custom of keeping large sums of money in his safe deposit box? I knew he had currency there from time to time. As a matter of fact, Gordon Syme and Harry Neal came to your office and told you Shorty was trying to get that cash from Ed, didn't they? Harry Neal and Gordon Syme? I don't remember. You have no recollection that Harry Neal and Gordon Syme came to your office and discussed Ed Walker? I discussed him with Gordon Syme many times because they were very close. I don't remember having a discussion with Harry Neal. I don't say that I didn't have, but I don't remember. Do you recall learning from Gordon Syme that Mr. Walker was keeping large sums of money in his safe deposit box, cash money? I think I had always known it. And do you recall that Gordon Syme told you that he was worried that Shorty was trying to get that money away from Ed? No, I don't remember that. At no time do you remember that. Not a flat-out statement like that. I don't remember it. Do you remember Harry Neal saying anything like that? I honestly wouldn't know, Mr. Neal, if I saw him today. It may be that he did. I don't remember. Mr. Schooling, the document which is Court's Exhibit 3, the codicil of December 11, 1970, I place that before you. Could you read the first two paragraphs of that for us to the jury, please? This is a second codicil to my last will and testament, dated October 29, 1968. I do hereby ratify and confirm my said will, dated October 29, 1968, and the first codicil to my will, dated September 12, 1969, in all respects, save so far as any part thereof shall be revoked or altered by this codicil. Now you say he ratified that last prior codicil, that codicil of September 12, 1969. That is what it says. Did you discuss that with him? No, that was my oversight. Did he question it? No. Did he sign the document as you prepared it? Yes. That's all. Sir, were you aware of any gifts that Mr. Walker had made to any of his family during the latter years of his lifetime? Yes. Do you recall any of those at the present time? I would have to refer to my file. Okay, this is a 154 voice. Starts with question by defense. We're in cross-examination. Ready? Now, you say that the first will that you had drawn for him was back in 1962? 61. 61, I beg your pardon. That is when you drew mutual wills for Mr. Walker and his wife. They weren't mutual, they were reciprocal. I mean for the two of them. Had you done any work for Mr. Walker prior to that time? I don't remember. I may have. When you testified that during the period of time that you had known him, you knew of his changing joint tenancy accounts. Would that go back to 1961? I don't know whether it did or not. When is your recollection of the earliest you remember such a conversation with Mr. Walker? Oh gosh, it was as long as he would be making these new wills. He would say, I am going to take out so-and-so, and I may make a joint tenancy, put him or put her on a bank account. That was his expression. It was may. He never said I will or I have, I am going to. There were many discussions concerning changing people to whom he was going to leave his money in joint tenancy accounts. Is that right? Yes. Did they generally include the same list of names that appear on that chart to your right there? Many of them, yes. Were there any others that you now recall that are not on that chart? No, none that are not on there. I thought you meant, were they all on there? I don't think he provided for all of them. It included them, yes, it always included some of those, but never any others. Were there gifts to your knowledge made to Mr. Whitworth? Yes. And what type of gift was that? If you know. You want me to read those again? No, not the gift. I mean a transfer in joint tenancy. Oh yes, wait a minute. I will have to find that. Again, referring to my 706 Schedule E, an account at Security Pacific National Bank, Walnut Park Branch at 6908 Pacific. At the time of death, there was $8,000 in the account. I couldn't say what, if any more, was in it when the account was originally set up. And what were the names on that account at that date? That was in joint tenancy between the decedent and Mr. Cecil Whitworth. Do your records reflect when that account was opened in the name of the two men? Well, I thought I had it somewhere. I am not sure. I probably do if I can find it. Opened October 13, 1969, account number 462603. A premium passbook opened for $10,000. Opened for $10,000? Yes. That was just shortly after his September 12, 1969 codicil then, in which he had revoked his gift to Lillian Davis. Is that correct? That's right. October 13. Were there any other gifts made to any other persons through this? You mean by joint tenancy? By means of joint tenancy. I am aware of the fact that at the time of his death there was an account at Home Savings with Fay, who is the wife of Cecil. I believe the amount at date of death was $9,500, but I will verify that. Just a minute. And do your records reflect when that account was opened? Not at that point. I may have it somewhere else. Let me look. Looks like it was set up October 9, 1969, but it was opened in the name of Mr. Walker and Mrs. Whitworth on October 9. I think it was not opened at that time, sir, which would indicate that just prior to February, there was $20,000 in the account? Yes. At the time of the withdrawal of this money that you have referred to, the account was in Mr. Walker's name alone. Apparently, pardon me, Your Honor, may I see what the witness is examining, please? Yes, I take it this is a photostatic copy supplied to you by the bank of a ledger card. By the bank, that is correct. Or savings and loan, I am going to have to object to testimony based on that, on the grounds it is hearsay and it is not the best evidence. Okay, ready? Okay, here we go. 140, question by defense. In preparing the estate matters for Mr. Walker, did you make application to this particular bank for the bank records concerning Mr. Walker's holdings? Yes, particularly with respect to this account. and that was filed for the preparation of federal tax returns and for the probate estate itself. Is that right? No, this was filed, you mean this was acquired? The request was made to the bank for the purpose. There was a controversy over the ownership of this account, whether it belonged to the estate or otherwise, so it was necessary for me to obtain all the information I could about the true ownership of the account. Is this the account with Lucy Goines? Well, that is the point. This account was in her name at one time. I object to any further testimony on this subject. I think the objection is good. If you want some testimony on the nature of the account, I am satisfied everybody probably realizes that he simply had to develop some kind of information in his own file, but that is not the best evidence. I appreciate that. Are you aware of any other such accounts from which names of beneficiaries had been removed? Joint tenancy accounts? I couldn't specify any, but I know that it occurred from time to time. Any particular beneficiaries whose names appear on that chart up there? Just a minute, I object to that, Your Honor, unless there is foundation laid as to why this is not hearsay. If he was told by the decedent, that is one thing. If he learned it through investigation, it is not the best evidence and it is hearsay. I agree to that. I was told by the decedent. In which case is that, Mr. Schooling? I am unable to answer that because as I remember it, he never specified to me the account, and I just didn't pay enough attention to recall who was on and who was taken off and how much and so on. Did Mr. Walker mention any names? Let me finish my answer. Names that he may or might take off accounts? From time to time he did. During the last 2 years of his life, it was his habit to use this method to augment his will and his plan. Do you recall any such names that he used in that fashion in the last 2 years of his lifetime? Well, I remember something about Dan Moran. I remember something about Ruth Moran. At one time there was such an account with Lillian Davis. I will object to the statement there was such an account and move that